Dear listener, thank you for trusting us with your deepest fears. This unsettling ambience, crafted just for you. Each forbidden tale we whisper in the dark drags you deeper than the last. Tonight's carefully chosen horrors will cling long after the final word. Stay with us and prepare to lose sleep. Story 1. Hello again, guys. I finally got round to posting the next log. I would have put this up sooner, but unfortunately, I've had bikes to repair. And if beep, beep don't do it, the customers might go online and discover it's not actually that hard. I want to thank you again for the help you've given me in finding Alice, the guy who said he'd track down the mirror shop is giving me regular updates on his progress. And I've received a whole lot of help going through American Missing Persons reports. It turns out Alice's work haven't heard from her either, and they're going through their emails for Rob's submission to the show. Everyone's been really helpful, so thank you, I've got to say. I'm sleeping worse since this whole thing began. It's strange to think that all the time Alice was out of contact, I was perfectly content. Yet now that she's got back in touch, every day I don't hear from her makes me that much more worried. That's assuming, of course, that it was her who sent me the email. I really hope it was. Thanks again, everyone. And please let me know if you find anything part 1, part 2, part 4, part 5, part 6, part 7, part 8, part 9, part 10 beep. The left/right game draft 19/2/2017 beep. ROB beep rice. Non-perishable. Beep ROB beep soy sauce. Non-perishable. Beep ROB beep salt. Non-perishable. Beep ROB beep eggs. Well, they re-perishable, but I bought 'em fresh. And I got hard-boiled that LL last a week. It s breakfast time. The start of our first full day on the road. Rob s been up since 7 o'clock, cooking a meal for anyone who wants it. The aroma pulls us out of our makeshift beds and arranges us around his portable stove. Our bowls are already full before we realize there s a catch. The trade-off for this supposedly free food. A 10-minute lecture from Rob about the power of rice. Beep ROB, beep C in the Pacific. Our guys used to be terrified of the Japanese. Whole armies marching on grains. Thought they were super soldiers. See the beep, know the secret. You give people rice in the morning, and they re-goin' for the whole day. After dropping 2 large spoonfuls of his favorite staple into a bowl and handing it to me, Rob breaks a raw egg over the top. The yolk clouds over as I stir it in. To be fair, the food is delicious, and it is fun to watch Rob on his soapbox. At least there are some things he is willing to talk at length about. I stare across the circle at Lilith and Eve. The the latter has spilled rice onto her top, and her friend is teasing her playfully. Eve sees me looking over, meets my gaze, and turns back to Lilith, her tone dramatically muted. I return to my food, making a point to seem attentive to Rob S. speech. A minute later, the two girls decide they've finished their meal, and I quickly realize so have I. Devouring the last few bites, I place my bowl in the small tub of hot water next to the stove and casually wander over to their car. Lilith and Eve are facing away from me, silently packing up their sleeping bags. They refuse to look at me once I reach them. In a deeply conspicuous attempt at subtlety, beep, Lilith. Beep, is he watching? I glance over at Rob. He is still talking at Bonnie, Clyde, and Apollo, asking them to guess what breakfast translates to in Japanese. Beep, beep. I think we refine. So did you see the car? Without answering, Eve reaches into the back seat and picks up a MacBook, the repository for all of Paranormicon S footage. She presses play as Lilith, and I huddle around her, blocking the view of any potential onlookers. The footage depicts a familiar road. Lilith and Eve must have dropped off the hitchhiker and just made the next corner. I can hear them talking about the experience, both terrified and thrilled at the events of the day. Eve reminds Lilith that they need to look out for the car. Lilith swears, and the camera immediately starts scouring the roadside. Beep, Evie, beep, look, there it is. Beep, Lilith. Beep, I see it. Slow down, slow down. The abandoned car comes into view, with Eve slowing to a crawl, and Lilith maxing out her camera as zoom function. A precious few details can be summarily gleaned. The car S windscreen and driver S side window are broken. The keys are still in the ignition, and once Eve overtakes the wreck, it is just possible to make out a dark stain soaked into the driver's seat. Beep, Lilith. Beep, stop the car. Just as Video Eve starts to slow to a halt, the real Lilith shuts the laptop. I glance between them, trying to keep my voice as low as possible. Beep, AS. Beep, you stop the car. Beep, EVE. Beep, I mean yeah, beep, Lilith. Beep, we know you told us not to, but it was like really weird, so I went over. And beep, AS. Beep, you got beep out beep of the car. Beep, EVE. Beep, for the record I was super against it. Beep, Lilith. Beep anyway. There wasn't much in there that we didn't get from the road, except there was a bag on the back seat. Beep, AS. Beep, did you get a look inside? Beep, Lilith. Beep, yeah, do you wanna? Lilith nods her head towards the back of their car. It takes me a second to realize what she is getting at. beep AS, beep it S in the boot. Beep EVE, beep it S in the what. Beep AS, beep it S in the trunk. Beep LILITH, beep yeah, obviously. We couldn't just leave it there. Look, you can watch the rest of the footage any time. We LL even send it to you. But you need to look in this bag before we hit the road. I check on Rob once more. He washing up the bowls and cutlery, exchanging small talk with Bonnie, oblivious to what transpiring a mere 5 meters away. Lilith and Eve escort me to the trunk, reforming our secretive huddle before Eve lifts it open. A brown leather duffel bag sits front and center. It looks expensive, but worn, probably a few decades old. The pair gesture for me to unzip it. Beep LILITH. Beep, just to preface this. I want to say this whole trip has been beep weird. The bag isn't exactly full. I rummage through the loose contents, finding a few sets of good quality men's shirts and a pair of jeans. Further down I find a small and well-used shaving kit. I am starting to wonder what Lilith and Eve are so bent out of shape over when my hand hits the hard edge of a straight, rectangular object. Slowly and with great care, I manage to extricate it from layers of wool and denim it a package. A heavy square block about the length of my forearm, neatly wrapped in brown paper. It seems completely unassuming, except for a black wire hanging from the underside, leading back into the bag itself. Lifting the wire, a black plug rises out and swings slightly in midair. Beep EVE, beep turn it around, with both girls watching me intently. I turn the package in my hands. The wire connects to the charging port of an old Nokia 3210, which in turn is superglued to the package, along with a few shards of exposed circuit board. Last, but certainly not least, are the words emblazoned on the brown paper, in imposing black typeface. C4 explosive. My mouth feels dry. Beep AS. Beep I wasn't expecting that. Beep LILITH. Beep I know. Beep this road right. There was tons more in his trunk, too. It was insane. Beep AS. Beep, is this dangerous? Beep EVE. Beep, not right now. It's basically inert, unless you have the detonator. Beep AS. Beep you resure. Beep LILITH. Beep. We have Wikipedia downloaded on a hard drive. It's the only reason Eve let me bring it here. She read the article like 3 times. Anyway, the Nokia out of battery. Beep AS. Beep okay well. I am not even going to ask how you know that I don't get this. Why would someone bring plastic explosive for the left/right game? I mean, what the beep are we heading into? Beep EVE. Beep, I have no idea. Do you know if Rob has any? Beep, R-O-B. Beep, if I have any what? When I look up, Rob S., only a few steps away from us. I hide the C4 behind my back, dropping it into my satchel next to my notebook. I just manage to pull my fingers out of the way as Eve instinctively slams the trunk shut. Beep AS. Beep tips for sleeping in cars. These guys had a rough night. Beep ROB. Beep, well, I am sorry to hear that. Just something you gotta get used to, I guess. We were hitting the road in 15/20 minutes. That all right with you guys? Beep EVE. Beep, yeah, totally. Beep ROB. Beep Bristol. You mind helping me pack up? Beep AS. Beep, not at all. Painfully aware of what S hanging at my side. I step away with Rob towards the now dismantled stove. Looking over my shoulder, I see Lilith and Eve are watching us go, their faces awash with apprehension. I can't say I feel the same, despite my surroundings and the multitude of unsettling events. I don't have space in my head for apprehension just now. All anxiety is slowly being pushed out, its territory annexed by a bolstering sense of resolve. There are far too many strange things happening on this road. And even if it kills me, I am going to find out what they all mean. Beep ACE, beep Rob. Can I talk to you? We packed everything in the back of the Wrangler and are about to get back on the road when Ace comes up behind us. Rob turns around, and I sense an icy shield raising up as he curtly addresses our compatriot. Beep ROB. Beep, what is it, Ace? Beep ACE. Beep, can I ask you something? It S okay. If you need me to go home after. The shield thaws. This isn't the Ace we've seen before. And Rob S., perceptive enough to notice. He engages, albeit cautiously. Beep ROB. Beep, what do you want to ask? Ace shuffles uncomfortably. Suddenly, he seems much younger. Beep ACE. Beep, does the hitchhiker, does anything happen if you don't pick him up? Beep ROB. Beep, oh beep Ace, I told you. You can't tell me what happened. Beep ACE. Beep, I was making my way down the road, and I was angry at how you'd been. And when I saw the hitchhiker, I thought I should, do what I said and just drive by. Ace starts to tremble, unable to meet Rob S.I. Beep ACE. Beep. A minute later, I look in the rear view mirror, and an S sitting in the back of my car. S just talking about the weather. I mean, I swear I didn't pick him up. But when I think about it, all these memories come back. I start to remember pulling over, letting him in. It's like I did it. But I didn't even beep ROB. Beep, did you talk to him? Beep ACE. Beep no, no. No. I promise I didn't he say a word. Rob stares at Ace in silence. Ace hangs his head like a penitent criminal facing judgment. Beep ROB. Beep feel S awful Don beep. Ace finally looks up, confused at Rob S words, searching the man S expression for clues. Beep ROB. Beep I. Did the same as you the first time. Just drove right by. Wasn't T gonna let some stranger in my car. Nearly jumped out of my skin when I saw him in the rear view. Rob grins at Ace, who manages to smile shakily back. Beep ROB. Beep UNT. Got the right gear for this, Ace. I like to run a tight ship, and I gotta say it beat me off. If you wanna turn that Porsche of yours around, no one LL think any less of you. But if you wanna keep on this road, how about you try to listen more, and I, LL, try to be less of a hard beep. Rob holds his hand out for Ace to shake. It's an offer of peace, or at the very least an offer of terms. Ace accepts it, grimacing only slightly as he faces Rob S. iron grip. Beep ROB. Beep bout time. We hit the road. 5 minutes later, we re-rolling into a deep valley. Each member of the convoy appearing over the crest of the hill behind us. Everyone S present and accounted for, including Ace. Beep AS. Beep. I have to say I am impressed. Beep ROB. Beep with what? Beep AS. Beep with how you handled Ace. One might presume a guy who has been divorced 4 times isn't he the best at conflict resolution. Beep ROB. Beep divorce is conflict resolution. Beep AS. Beep, that S a good point. He seemed to be saying, the hitchhiker beep made beep him pull over. Is that really what happens? Beep ROB. Beep yep. He always ends up in the back seat, and you always remember picking him up. Beep AS. Beep it's just. That S not scientifically possible. Beep ROB. Beep get used to that. We spend the next 2 hours in silence, with me typing up my notes, and Rob navigating the sparse few turns that show up every now and then. Ace S testimony troubles me, perhaps because it stretches my favorite theory, that the game is an elaborate hoax perpetrated by Rob Guthard. I was content that the hitchhiker could have been an incredibly deft performer. But even if the man was a RADA-trained thespian, that doesn't he make him capable of mind control. Ace could be insane, or an maybe actor himself. But those ideas sound exactly like the idle rationalizations I decried in Rob earlier. I am not sure what my theory is at the moment. I keep working, hoping to type my way to revelation. A few lone trees have started to show up in the distance. Towering wild pines with trunks as thick as barrels. Without my noticing, the trees grow slowly more numerous, and in that creeping way that landscapes change, it isn't long until they span both sides of the road, encapsulating us in a deep, bright forest. Realizing IV recorded everything of substance, and with Rob concentrating on the drive, I have no choice but to lay back in my seat and watch the world roll by. Despite the pervasive strangeness of the left/right game, there is beauty on the road, under the light shade of the canopy, the smell of pine needles permeating the still air. I actually feel myself starting to relax. It only takes 3 words to change that. The words Don T come from Rob. He S, as quiet as always. They aren't T spoken by the rest of the convoy, either. The words are writ large in calligraphic gold paint, resting on a spotless white sign, even from a distance, with the letters little more than a blur. I know what they re going to say. They re the words I've been dreading since I switched off the radio. The words I spent a long, troubled night hoping I'd never see. Welcome to jubilation. It turns out there is room in my head for apprehension. Beep ROB. Beep, this is Fairman to all cars. We're going to be heading through a small town. No rules here. Just keep driving and we LLB fine. Rob puts his radio back into the receiver. I try to ignore the distinct knot in my stomach. Beep AS. Beep. What does the name Chuck Greenwald mean to you? Beep ROB. Beep bout as much as John Doe. Why? Beep AS. Beep. He S the radio DJ here. Beep ROB. Beep in jubilation. How do you know something like that? Beep AS. Beep I was listening to his show last night. What do you know about this place? Beep ROB. Beep seems like a good town. Folk Don T pay attention to ya. I just head straight through. Beep AS. Beep you've never seen anything untoward. Beep ROB. Beep some weird stuff now and again. I like to keep my eyes on the road. The forest clears abruptly, like a parting curtain, to reveal a picture-perfect American town. Archetypal almost to the point of self-parody we arrived in jubilation. There, no denying this town is beautiful. We re-welcomed by a row of vibrantly colored shops, spanning the length of a long, wide street. At the far end, an ornate, gray-walled town hall proudly surveys its domain. The place is immaculate. I fail to find a solitary piece of litter on the sidewalk. A single smudge on the plate glass shop windows. Every inch of jubilation is pristine, tranquil, and noticeably deserted. Beep AS. Beep, where is everyone? Beep ROB. Beep, I don't know. There usually some around. Maybe there a game on. We take the next right. then another left. The story S the same at every turn. A beautiful, leafy suburban town, entirely bereft of its human population. The Caf S are free of bustle. The surface of the public pool is still. We even see the school. A row of finger-painted faces smiling at us from the kindergarten windows as we pass by. The building itself is locked up, however, which is odd, seeing as it is noon on a Wednesday. Eventually, the Wrangler pulls onto the first residential street we've encountered. The sign on the corner reads Sycamore Row. The quaint shops are replaced by luxuriate houses, all of them identical. White walls, wide porches, and fresh green lawns cut to a uniform length. The road stretches in a straight line for about a mile, creating an eerie corridor of copy/pasted buildings. The strangest thing about the street, however, is vocalized by Rob. Beep, R-O-B. Beep, well, I guess we know where everybody is now. In front of every house, a dining room table stands on the lawn, occupied without fail by a family of 4. 1 husband, 1 wife, 1 son, and 1 daughter. They resharing a meal together. A unit on the left clink their glasses of orange juice as they dine on pork chops and salad. The family on the right share a large hunk of meatloaf, broad smiles on their faces, staring along the road I estimate upwards of 800 people, in neat subsets of 4, all dining at the same time. None of them seem to notice us. Beep R-O-B, beep ferryman to all cars. Looks like we've come during a town celebration. Let us not bother these good people as we pass on through. Rob lets the car roll slowly down the street, his foot light on the gas pedal, trying to make as little noise as possible. The more families we pass, the clearer it becomes that every single one of them shares common characteristics. All of them are impeccably dressed. All of them consist of the same subset: husband, wife, son, daughter, though their chosen meals vary slightly. They all share a raucous, almost oppressive happiness. Beep APOLLO. Beep small town America. Am I right, guys? Ahaha Apollo S jokes. Don T. Make things any better. I feel claustrophobic. Trapped. Some screaming animal deep within me knows that it is surrounded on every side by something it doesn't understand. I don't know if I am imagining it. But as we continued down the road, everyone outside seems to be laughing a little harder and celebrating a little more. We successfully crept more than halfway down the street. A sharp left turn coming up at the end, representing the road out of jubilation. Another street comes up on the right, Acer Road. While we pass by it, I take the opportunity to glance down this new avenue, curious as to whether every street is like ours. I don't like what I see. The houses are similarly prestigious, the walls pristine white, but like a spot the difference puzzle. It's the subtle changes that make the picture. There are no tables and no families on the wide green lawns. Almost every window I can see is broken. Cars lie abandoned in the road, with one smashed into a splintered porch. Above every door, an X has been drawn in red paint, and outside of each house, a small mound of clothes lie on the fresh-cut lawn, a huge collective pile of men S, women S, and children S. Shoes tower at the end of the street, seemingly ownerless. Beep R.O.B. Beep great going everybody. Let us get back out there. We've reached the end of the street. I breathe a sigh of relief as we bid farewell to jubilation. I vindictively see it off in my wing mirror as we turn the corner. I immediately wish I hadn't when, in the split second before it disappears from view, I glimpse the 800+ residents of Sycamore Row. They errant smiling anymore, and they all looking our way. I welcome the forest as the trees rise up around us once more. The indifference of the nature is a welcome change to the saccharine focivility of jubilation. Beep APOLLO. Beep towns like that make me glad. I am a city boy. Beep BONNIE. Beep I thought it was nice. Wasson beep like wintry bay. Beep CLYDE. Beep I don't think I've been. Beep BONNIE. Beep oh maybe it was Shelburne Falls. Beep CLYDE. Beep oh. It was a little like Shelburne Falls. Beep ROB. Beep guys. We gotta keep this channel clear. We hurry along the next road and turn right. The further we get from the eerie town of jubilation, the higher our spirits seem to be. Beep AS. Beep how long until we stop. Beep ROB. Beep bout another 4 hours. Nothing big in between us, and there though, shouldn't he be a problem? Beep AS. Beep good to hear. So, what beepdos beep breakfast translate to in Japanese? Beep ROB. Beep you heard that. Beep AS. Beep yeah. I've been curious all day. Does it have something to do with I jolt forwards? Sharp pain in my neck as my head recoils back against my seat. Rob has stamped his foot onto the brake, bringing us to an immediate and shocking halt. Before I can ask why, my question is answered. As one of the colossal pine trees slams into the road ahead of us, blocking our route forward. Beep ROB. Beep beep it. You all right? Beep AS. Beep I am fine. Massaging my neck. I look towards the base of the felled tree. The low end is covered in straight, sharp-cut marks. Someone has brought this tree down, timing its fall in an attempt to cripple the wrangler. Beep AS. Beep Rob what s going on. Beep ROB. beep ferryman to all cars. Full reverse. Watch out for the people behind you. The convoy pulls away. Back down the road towards jubilation. Rob waits for Apollo to start moving, then backs up himself. There S, a second jolt, as Rob abruptly stops the car, surveying our means of egress. Beep ROB, beep ferryman, to all cars. Road S done, but there S a gap at the end. Be careful. Rob S right, though the tree has fallen across the tarmac. Only the thin treetop lies over the grassy bank between the road and the forest. There S a bit of a valley between the edge of the road and the grass. And Rob wastes no time in showing the others how to negotiate it. Twisting the wheel, Rob Dry steers towards the gap and proceeds cautiously towards the roadside. I watch the asphalt disappear beneath us moments before the telltale bump. The Wrangler drops down the small bankside and turns around the fallen tree. I watch the needle-covered tip brush against my window as we roll past. With a second bump, Rob brings us back onto the road and pulls us over to the far edge, turning the Jeep to face towards the convoy. Beep ROB, beep OK Apollo, make your way. Beep APOLLO, beep on it Rob. As Apollo swerves towards the gap, I hear something, the sound of a running engine. At first so quiet that it is almost impossible to isolate it from the convoy's own rumblings. It has since grown louder, however, and it is growing steadily more noticeable. Beep AS, beep Rob, someone S coming. Beep ROB, beep Apollo, get yourself over here, right now. All car S, you're on double time. Get moving. Apollo accelerates towards the gap. His Range Rover shudders, banking on the grassy decline. But it is hardly any effort to pull himself around the tree and back onto the road. The noise in the distance grows louder. I can picture the vehicle careering towards the corner, just one turn away from having its windshield locked on the convoy, though I have no idea what it might be. I don't want to share road space with anything coming out of jubilation. The rest of the convoy can hear the noise now. Bonnie and Clyde roll over to the gap and quickly but tentatively push themselves down onto the side. It is clearly harder than Rob and Apollo make it look. After a few moments, they travel across the bank, bringing themselves out on the other side. The vehicle turns the corner. A white truck skids into view, its tires shrieking against the road. A metal beam sticks up behind the driver's compartment, and a hook swings with the momentum of the hard right turn. It is a tow truck, though something tells me it is not here to lend us assistance. Beep ROB, beep all cars. Once you re on the other side, drive. Wait around the left turn. ILL radio, if I they get by me. Beep APOLLO, beep, what about you guys? Beep ROB, beep ILL, come once everyone S across. Now ain't the time for questions. Eve and Lilith, get over here now. We still have time to get everyone across. But every passing second feels like a precious, fleeting loss. Eve and Lilith are impatient for their turn, dropping onto the roadside and coming back up in a matter of seconds. The truck is gaining with incredible speed. I can just about make out the words Jubilation Recovery scrawled across the hood, though the letters are rapidly becoming easier to read. Blue Jay takes her time dismounting the road. In fact, she is almost casual in how she maneuvers, whittling away at the remaining seconds we have. A swell of anger wells up inside of me as her wheels hit the road again. If she is calm about this situation, then good for her. But I can see Ace drumming his fingers frenetically against the steering wheel. Now stranded alone on the other side, I watch Blue Jay follow the rest of the convoy to the next turn, displaying none of the urgency anyone else has shown. Beep ROB, beep, take it easy Ace. You ain't built for this. Ace takes the corner, heeding Rob S. plea for caution, but unwisely taking it almost head on. His front wheel thuds over the edge of the bank, and the chassis hits the tarmac. The drop is just a little too steep for the Porsche S clearance. Rob S warnings ring in my ears as Ace accelerates on 3 wheels. His car engaging in a slow turn with little forward motion. Beep ACE, beep Rob. What do I do? Rob. The pickup truck maintains its speed and aligns itself with Ace S Porsche, its thunderous velocity defying all logic, all concern for Ace S or their own safety. Beep ROB, beep, get out of the car Ace. Get out of the beep car. Ace struggles with his seatbelt, stress overpowering his motor functions. He unclasps it and throws the belt to the side. He grabs the door and pushes. It swings open slightly, then immediately slams against the bark of the pine tree for a moment that lasts all too long. He shares with me a look of pleading terror. The door is slammed shut, crumpling as the tow truck collides with the passenger side of Ace S car. Ace is launched against the door, his head smashing against the window. The ungodly racket of shrieking metal suddenly gives way to silence. Beep ROB, beep beep. Rob climbs into the back of the car. Beep AS, beep Rob, what can I do? Beep ROB, beep stay here. I hear Rob rummaging among the luggage as the tow truck reverses out of Ace S Porsche. The hood of the tow truck is completely and impossibly unharmed by the impact, as are its 2 occupants. They park the truck's side onto us, the hook hanging a few meters away from the back of the Porsche. The words jubilation recovery appear again, now accompanied by a slogan, here to help. Two men in white shirts and blue overalls climb out and wander over to the ruined Porsche. They barely seem to register the situation at all, casually chatting together as they throw open Ace S passenger side door. The stunned Ace looks like he battling a concussion, only barely cognizant as he pulled out of the car. He quickly grows more aware as the mechanics grab him by each arm, struggling against them as his captors talk amongst themselves. Beep ROB, beep let him go. When I turn around, Rob is stepping out of the Wrangler, apparently hidden within those neat stacks of luggage was a loaded hunting rifle. Rob raises the stock to his shoulder and repeats himself, beep ROB, beep let him go. The mechanics pay no attention to Rob. They continue to frog March Ace over to the truck, one of them making a quiet joke to the other as they go. They laugh. An awful bang erupts beside me, and a deep red hole bursts from one mechanic-s torso, blood slowly seeping out of the wound. Inexplicably, the mechanic does nothing more than look down at his wound, up at Rob, and then back to the matter at hand. He hardly breaks stride as he continues towards the truck, bleeding freely onto the floor. I hear Rob set about reloading the rifle. The mechanics arrive at the back of the truck with Ace. There are two short loops of thin chain hanging from the lowest of the hook S chain links. The mechanics feed Ace S arms through one loop each until he hanging by the armpits in front of the hook itself. Rob fires another shot that goes nowhere. The mechanics grab a handful of Ace S hair, chatting as they do so, and lift Ace S head up until his lower jaw is just above the hook. In that moment, despite everything, despite all my journalistic ideals, my pursuit of truth, my duty as an observer, I close my eyes. The visual disappears into darkness, but the sound, docentee, the impact, and the sorrowful, obstructed groan that follows penetrates my bones, reverberating throughout my very being. Another gunshot, and the sharp twang of a metallic ricochet. Ace S cries continue as the engine starts up and carries him off back to jubilation. I hear another gunshot that sounds like it hits nothing but air as the engine and Ace S whimpers grow quieter. A few moments pass before one final, measured gunshot echoes around the car. Beep ROB, beep Godamnit, beep beep DAMNIT. The Wrangler S chassis clangs as Rob kicks the side with all his considerable might. I open my eyes to see a fallen pine tree, a ruined Porsche, and an otherwise empty road. When Rob climbs into the car, it's clear he's trying to regulate his breathing, an internalized rage lighting him up, barely under his control. Beep, R.O.B. Beep, we have to go. Rob turns us around, pointing the Wrangler back down the road. The quiet of the car echoes in my ears. Along with other noises I can't hope to forget. I watch the fallen pine grow smaller in the rear-view mirror, overwhelmed by a feeling that I am leaving more behind on this road than I can currently imagine, bereft of conversation, of logic, of any semblance of comfort. Rob and I do the only thing we can. We take the next left. Story 2. Well, you really beep up this time, didn't he you? You found a gnarly deal on a beautiful home that almost seemed too good to be true, and you jumped at it. And now that you all moved in, you've started to notice some anomalies. You know the type. The spooky-dooky anomalies of the supernatural persuasion. Bumps in the night, doors opening and closing by themselves, auditory hallucinations of voices and whispers. It's more common than you may think. But not everyone realizes the danger. These signs could be proof that some forsaken lost souls inhabit your property. Maybe the previous grandmother self-immolated in the attic. Maybe dear old Dad went suddenly insane and repainted the house with the blood of his children. Or Mom tried seducing demons in the basement. If this sounds even vaguely familiar to you, and you are looking to the good old internet for help, then you've come to the right place. You see, I have this friend well. Be fed beep, this friend named Nathan. A couple months back, Nathan found a house for sale in southern Georgia. It was nestled along a remote stretch of woods just outside of Waycross. It was a historical area, an old colonial-style home, just under 5,000 square feet, 6 bed/6 bath, with white picket fences and a dozen acres, the quintessential American dream house, by all accounts. The price was unbelievably low. But after Nathan contacted the real estate agent, he found that the price that he had seen listed was indeed the price that was being asked. For most people, I imagine this would be raised some pretty big red flags. But Nathan was an idiot, the confident type of idiot that believed machismo is substantial for conquering all of life's obstacles. I know it's not kind to speak ill of the dead like that, but I am just trying to give an accurate portrayal of the kind of person Nathan was. Why, no, the alpha male who hits on your girlfriend, lives at the gym, and probably spanks his meat to his own selfies. For people like Nathan, friend is really just another word for ego reinforcer. He was cocky and often let pride get the better of him. His wife, Janelle, was actually my ex-girlfriend from a while back. Bit of a beep, but practically a supermodel. They had 2 kids, Natalie and Mason, who were both spoiled brats. Again, I am just trying to give an honest perspective of them, in hopes that we may all learn something from what happened. You see, what happened to Nathan was something which I believe could have been easily avoided if only he had followed a few simple instructions. After the funeral, I got to pondering on the matter and realized that what we all really need is a set of rules to follow if you believe your house is haunted. Let us begin rule number 1 when looking to purchase or rent a house. Always ask for the history. Odds are if a house is being offered at way below market value, then there is a very good reason for it being that way. Nathan, didn't he do this? And thought that the under-market price was simply the universe handing him something he didn't really earn, as it often seemed to do. Nathan jumped at the offer, and within a few weeks, he and his family were approved to begin moving in. I volunteered to help them move in, and I'll be honest, the house was absolutely gorgeous. Things were great for them at first, but Nathan soon started noticing some odd occurrences. It started with this knocking sound that seemed to reverberate all over the home at odd hours. He said he could never seem to pinpoint where it was coming from, and it never seemed to originate from the same place twice. Eventually, he just chalked it up to the house settling. But that was just the beginning. Rule number 2, trust your gut. Your home is the last place you should feel uncomfortable. If you get that inkling of discomfort in the back of your mind that never seems to fully dissipate, pay attention to it. It is probably your subconscious trying to warn you. Nathan tried ignoring these sounds, told his wife that it was just normal or the wind, and comforted his children when they felt scared. He had 2 dogs, Rusty and Sailor, both of them black labs, and both seemed to become very anxious after moving in. Nathan did his best to get medication to help the dogs relax, but it didn't seem to help much. That brings us to rule number 3. Along with your gut, you should also trust your pets. Animals have instincts far greater than humans. It has been said that man is the only creature who will sense danger and still wander into it. Animals have a sense for the supernatural, dogs and cats in particular. If you find them growling at what appears to be nothing, or constantly staring into specific areas of the house, then pay attention to that. Odds are they can see something you can't. Nathan told me that Rusty, the older of the 2 dogs, would pace the hall each night for hours. He said it was like he was standing guard over something. On more than one occasion, Rusty suddenly blurted into a ferocious bout of barking and snarling Nathan would come out into the hall, but never found anything. He grew concerned for Rusty and took him to the vet. But the vet confirmed he was in good health. Meanwhile, Sailor, the younger dog, slept at the side of Mason's bed each and every night. The poor boy soon developed crippling nightmares that would torment him relentlessly, and Sailor seemed to sense it. Each time Mason would wake up screaming, Sailor would be there to try and comfort him. And that segues perfectly into our next rule. Rule number 4, beware the nightmares. Young children are similar to animals in the way that they seem more perceptive to things that adults are not. This one can be difficult because there are many root causes of nightmares, with things like anxiety, depression, and other mental illnesses. The telltale sign is whether your child suddenly develops them soon after entering the home pore. Mason had absolutely horrific dreams, and night after night he would be tormented by them. He often spoke of the blurry man that came to him while he slept and whispered terrible things. He even said that sometimes he would see the blurry man while he was awake, but never more than a quick glimpse, and always in the shadows or outside in the woods. Nathan and his wife worried that perhaps Mason was schizophrenic, but multiple doctors confirmed this was not the case. They tried giving Mason sleeping pills, various supplements, and burned incense to help him sleep more peacefully. It worked for a while, until Natalie started having them to rule number 5, try to determine what kind of spirit you read dealing with. If you see flashes of a small child running through the halls at night, or orbs spiraling in the air, then odds are your ethereal neighbor is rather benign. Some people even discover they rather enjoy life with a spectral roommate and find their antics to be rather interesting. Most believe that spirits who pass away before completing what their soul desired will become stuck in a sort of purgatory. Many are scared, confused, and angry, but some, primarily young children, seem to be almost jubilant at times. Most of these are unnerving, but altogether harmless. But then there's the other spirits rule, number 6. If you or any member of your family develop inexplicable bruises, cuts, or lesions, then do not take them lightly. This should be a massive red flag and is a very bad sign. If you feel as though you are being attacked as you sleep and wake up with unexplained scratches or wounds, then just get the beep out of the house. Honestly, a malevolent spirit capable of inflicting physical wounds is not something to be trifled with. Odds are it's a demon, and honestly, that is the best case scenario. There are other non-Abrahamic related entities that could be responsible as well. They are very rare, but if encountered, well, I am afraid even my handy set of rules 1T be enough to stop them. Natalie and Mason suffered multiple scratch marks, wounds, and even a few bruises that almost looked like bite marks. Nathan S. wife Janelle was also subjected to these attacks. The children S. teachers at school began to notice and became quite worried for their safety. Obviously, their first thought was not paranormal, but rather that the children were being abused at home, only when social services threatened to remove the children from his custody did Nathan finally agree to move them out of the house. Janelle and the kids moved in with her mother a couple hours away, and Nathan was left all alone with the dog's rule number 7. Let people know what is going on. Yes, I know the thought of admitting to a close friend that you believe your house is haunted may be a daunting one, but it's usually better than the alternatives. The modern world rarely takes these claims seriously. We put ghosts in movies and video games. But when someone actually claims to see one, we aren't so quick to believe them. Technology and science have led us to believe we are safe. That is our folly. But it's also a topic for a different day. This is yet another rule that Nathan did not abide. The worse that things got for him and his family, the more secluded he became. On numerous occasions, he phoned the police saying that he believed someone had broken in, but they never found evidence of it. Eventually, they even put him on a blacklist and warned that any further contact would result in legal trouble rather than tell his parents or brother or any of his friends what was going on. He retreated into himself. He became fidgety and paranoid, at times refusing to return phone calls and texts from his loved ones. He just broke contact, and things only got worse. Rule 8 and 9 sort of belong in the same category, although one is a little more extreme than the other. Rule number 8. If you suspect something is up, it doesn't hurt to perform a cleansing. Like I said earlier, the modern world has little time to entertain the notion of ghosts and the supernatural, but that shouldn't ward you off. If you are unsure about whether your home is being haunted or not, then a routine cleansing can do wonders for you. I am willing to bet there are mediums and priests in your town that can get the job done, even if you can't find anyone local. You can always just go online and find instructions for yourself. It's not as effective that way, but it's better than nothing. Rule number 9. If you are really feeling as though you are in danger, get someone to perform an exorcism. It's the step that no one wants to take, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Priests and spiritual leaders are your go-to for these kinds of things, even if you yourself are not religious. These people honestly do know how to help their S some evidence that Nathan was attempting to do this. But it S unknown why exactly it didn't he work out. Maybe he second-guessed himself and thought he could handle it. Or maybe his ego took control once again. Nathan had been collecting evidence for a while and had amassed quite a stash of clues. He had audio recordings which relayed banging on the walls and footsteps in the attics. He took multiple videos, but none of them really showed anything except for the last one. But by that point, it was too late. In his journal, he also wrote that he experienced items in the house levitating on several occasions. But sadly, he had no recorded proof of this rule, number 10, the big one. Whatever you do, Don T tried to antagonize the spirit. This should really go without saying. But angrily challenging the spirit, or daring it to manifest, is a really bad idea. But as you may have guessed, Nathan and his unlimited stream of testosterone decided to do just that. He got really beep one night and began ruminating on all that had been happening. Nathan was always a skeptic, but even he couldn't ignore the psychological impact on his family, whether it was imagined or not. He realized his relationship with his children and wife were being heavily strained, and his new house had become a place of hostility. This made Nathan very angry, so Nathan stood up and shouted at his empty house for the spirit to come forth and face him. He was met only with silence, and so he shouted again. Never once did the spirit S answer his call. After a few more verbose challenges, he broke into about laughter, probably believing himself to look ridiculous. Apparently not everyone who was watching felt the same, though Nathan managed to stumble into bed not long after, and was out cold within a couple minutes. Nathan had kept a security camera in his room in hopes of capturing proof, and that night he found something at around 2:13 am. Nathan is seen beginning to stir in his sleep in the security video. He grunts and speaks briefly, but the words were unintelligible. Suddenly, his eyes sprung wide open in the bed and began glancing around the room. Nathan appeared to be struggling, but his body didn't he move. It is believed he was suffering an episode of sleep paralysis, which left him temporarily paralyzed. His eyes continued to dart rapidly around the room. Then something happened that no one who saw the video could explain. The bedroom door slowly rolled open, but the darkness of the hallway was all-consuming. Nathan S. chest began frantically pumping up and down, and his eyes stretched wide open. Something was then seen moving in the hall. It could have been chalked up to a trick of the light at first, but then a hand was seen reaching through. It was gnarled and spindly, like the wretched, malformed appendage from some abyssal denizen, the figure slowly sauntered through the doorway. Its tall, dark silhouette nearly grazing the top of the door frame. It had no definite features, appearing only as a hooded, humanoid individual. No eyes or face, just a shadow corporealized from Nathan's deepest nightmares. Poor Nathan was heard mumbling and whimpering frantically. But in his paralyzed state, he was unable to fight back or flee. He could do nothing but watch in absolute horror as the thing approached him. It stopped at the foot of his bed and just stared at him. For about a minute Nathan continued to hyperventilate. And didn't he appear blink once during the entire ordeal? The thing then finally moved closer. It then leaned down, only a couple inches away from his face, and appeared to whisper something. It was too quiet for the mic on the camera to pick up. But needless to say, it did not make Nathan feel any better about the situation. Suddenly, the thing lashed out with its twisted hands, constricting like pythons around Nathan's throat. In his paralyzed state, he couldn't even struggle against his shrouded attacker. Within a minute, Nathan's chest stopped moving, and his eyes fell still. The entity retracted its hands and just stared at him for about a minute. Then, as if taunting those who would see the footage, it looked directly into the camera. It whispered something again, but again it was too quiet to discern what it was. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, it waltzed out of the room and vanished back into the darkness. Nathan was found by his wife Janelle a few days later, and she called the police. After an autopsy, Nathan was determined to have died via strangulation, much as what was shown in the video. Cops scoured the premises and found footprints from the intruder. However, the footprints were soon matched to a pair of Nathan's own boots. The police, of course, were not so quick to believe that Nathan was simply killed by supernatural forces. They conducted interviews with neighbors, friends, and family members, but none of them seemed capable or motivated enough to have done it. There were no signs of breaking and entering, and nothing had been stolen from the home. They came to me and conducted an interview as well. But of course, that was a futile effort. I mean, sure, the fact that Janelle was my ex-girlfriend was reason to suspect me. But I quickly dissuaded their accusations. Nathan was my friend, despite him not really being a good friend. What kind of friend bones your girlfriend behind your back anyways? I am not bitter about it, though, at least not as far as the police are concerned. My alibis were solid, and that's good enough for them. This brings us to my final rule. Rule number 11. Make sure you exhaust all other options before coming to the conclusion that your house is in fact haunted. only Nathan had taken a little more time to investigate his home and himself more thoroughly, then maybe he'd still be alive today. Maybe he would have found the many wireless speakers hidden in his attic to play the sounds of knocking. Maybe he would have found the patches in his air ducts that leaked mild doses of hallucinogenic drugs into his home. Maybe he would have detected the dog whistle alarm that caused his dogs to react so strangely. If he bothered to check himself, he may have found trace amounts of suxamethonium, a paralyzing toxin that once ingested will leave the person immobile, yet conscious to all pain. It would have been difficult to find, as even Coroner S. do not normally test for the substance, unless specifically requested, no matter how you really slice it. This entire ordeal really comes back to Nathan himself. If only he had been a better person, and not constantly demeaned his peers at every turn. If only he hadn't been so stubborn and proud. If only he hadn't gone behind my back and boned my ex-girlfriend, thus ruining our future and sending me into the spiraling depths of crippling depression, then maybe I would have helped him. So, you may be wondering, is this my confession? No, of course not. This is only my list of suggestions and rules for how things may have turned out differently for Nathan and his family. These are all hypothetical explanations and are in no way to be considered incriminating evidence to be used in court against me or anyone else for that matter. Besides, if this really was a confession, then that would make anyone who read it an accessory to Beep, and we certainly wouldn't want that. I hope you can understand that, and I do hope that we can trust each other in this regard. After all, I have really good software for tracing IPS, and Reddit makes it incredibly easy to access them. We wouldn't want your house to suddenly become haunted, now would we? Story 3. The silence of the Antarctic ice sheet wasn't empty. It was a suffocating blanket, a void that pressed down on the small, prefabricated research station designated Outpost Sigma. Inside, Dr. Aris Thorne stared at the core sample displayed on the high-resolution monitor. It wasn't the expected layers of compressed snow and ancient sediment nestled within the pristine ice, extracted from a depth of 3 kilometers, was something else. It's vibrating, Alina Rostova whispered, her breath fogging the chilled air near the monitor. The geologist's usual stoicism had fractured. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the edge of the console. At a frequency, nothing natural resonates like that down here. The sample was obsidian black, shot through with veins of iridescent blue that seemed to pulse with a light not reflected from anywhere in the lab. It wasn't tea ice, nor rock, nor any mineralogical database match. It was cold, colder than the surrounding ice by a measurable margin. And touching its container, a reinforced polymer cylinder sent a deep, unsettling thrum up the arm, a resonance that bypassed the skin and vibrated directly in the marrow. They called it the Anomaly. Spectroscopy is useless, Ben Carter muttered, his fingers flying over the keyboard, bringing up chaotic, nonsensical graphs. The station S-Tech specialist looked pale. Absorption, emission at S like at S eating the light, or reflecting wavelengths we can't even perceive. The sensors are screaming gibberish. Thorne, the team leader, a man whose life had been dedicated to the rational dissection of the physical world, felt the first icy finger of dread trace his spine. It wasn't just the object. It was the depth. 3 kilometers down, trapped, waiting. For how long? Millions of years. Billions. The sheer temporal scale was dizzying. Humanity was a flicker in the cosmic dark. This thing predated continents, predated life itself. What could it possibly be? The nightmares started that night. Shared, fragmented horrors. Not of monsters, but of perspective. Alina dreamt of falling upwards into an infinite, starless void. Her scream soundless. Her body dissolving into constituent atoms scattered across light years. Ben saw geometric impossibilities, angles that folded in on themselves. Fractals that spiraled into screaming faces. Structures that defied Euclid and sanity simultaneously. Thorne dreamt of eyes. Not eyes he could see, but the sensation of being observed from a vantage point so vast, so removed, that his entire planet, his entire species, was less than a mote of dust on an infinite lens, a gaze devoid of malice, devoid of interest, utterly indifferent. The psychological toll was immediate and corrosive. Paranoia bloomed. Whispers echoed in the ventilation shafts, that wherein tea whispers, but the low, resonant thrum of the Anomaly amplified. Shadows in the corridors seemed deeper, thicker, clinging unnaturally. The pervasive silence of the ice outside became oppressive, charged with an expectant tension. They stopped sleeping. They jumped at the flicker of fluorescent lights. Alina compulsively traced the veins on her forearm, whispering about the blue lines. Ben became obsessed with the station S seismic monitors, convinced the subtle, almost imperceptible tremors were ice settling. But something deeper responding Thorne insisted they continue. Knowledge was their shield, their purpose. They needed to understand. against every screaming instinct. They prepared the deep core drill for another extraction, directly adjacent to the Anomaly S location. The descent was a descent into madness. The drill bit screamed as it hit something impossibly hard, then yielded with a sickening crunch. Readings went haywire. Gravitational anomalies spiked. Temperature plunged locally around the borehole, and then the core sample emerged it, wasn't more of the black material. It was a fragment, a shard, translucent like flawed crystal, yet containing within its depths swirling nebulae, impossible constellations, and geometries that made the eyes water and the brain rebel. Looking at it wasn't seeing. It was an assault. Information flooded the optic nerve, raw, unfiltered, bypassing comprehension. It wasn't data. It was reality from a perspective so alien, so fundamentally other, that the human mind recoiled like a slug touched by Salt Ben Carter, looked into the shard. He didn't scream. He simply stopped. His eyes glazed over, fixed on the swirling, non-Euclidean light show within the crystal. A thin line of drool escaped the corner of his mouth. He whispered, a sound like dry leaves skittering on stone. It sleeps, but it dreams. And its dreams are places, where time is a river flowing backwards, where gravity is a lie. Then he slumped, catatonic. His mind shattered against the cliffs of the incomprehensible Alina, trying to pull him back, brushed the shard S container. Her hand jerked back as if burned, but the damage was done. She stared at her fingertips. The iridescent blue veins of the Anomaly were now tracing patterns under her skin, spreading like luminous roots. Her eyes, when she looked at Thorn, held a terrifying vacancy mixed with a dawning, horrifying understanding. It not in the ice, Eris, she breathed, her voice hollow. The ice, the rock, the planet, it in us. It everywhere. We just didn't see the cracks. Thorn felt the world tilt. The revelation wasn't a single piece of knowledge. It was the collapse of an entire paradigm. The Anomaly wasn't an object. It was a manifestation, a symptom, a piece of something vast beyond imagining that permeated the very fabric of space-time, slumbering beneath the crust of countless worlds, a consciousness, or perhaps merely a state, so immense and ancient that the rise and fall of species, the birth and death of stars, were less than the shifting of grains of sand in a cosmic desert. It didn't hate. It didn't care. Humanity wasn't insignificant. It was irrelevant, a momentary fluctuation in an eternal, indifferent ocean. The station. Lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness lit only by the eerie, pulsing glow of the Anomaly S container. and the luminous blue veins now crawling up Alina's neck. The thrumming intensified, vibrating through the floor, through their bones, resonating with the frozen hell outside. It wasn't a sound. It was the universe breathing in the suffocating blackness. Thorn understood the true horror. It wasn't destruction. It wasn't invasion. It was revelation, the comforting illusion of a knowable, human-centric universe was ripped away, leaving only the crushing, infinite void. They had scraped a sleeping leviathan with a toothpick, and it hadn't even stirred. But they had seen, they had felt the sheer, staggering scale of their own cosmic inconsequent spin remained catatonic, lost in the fractal nightmares within the shard. Alina stood rigid, her body becoming a canvas for the spreading, alien luminescence, her eyes reflecting not the room, but swirling galaxies and impossible angles. She spoke, but the voice wasn't hers. It was a chorus of whispers, layered and dissonant, echoing from the depths of the ice and the void beyond. We are motes in the eye of the dreaming god, and its dreams are cold. Thorn stumbled back, his rationality a broken toy. He looked towards the emergency exit, the thick metal door leading to the killing cold. Escape. To where? The indifferent gaze was everywhere. The anomaly wasn't contained. It was a keyhole, and through it, something had finally taken notice, not with malice, but with the passive, crushing weight of existence itself acknowledging. For a fleeting, horrific instant, the insignificant disturbance they represented, he raised a trembling hand. The blue veins were in on his skin yet, but in the reflection of the anomaly's pulsating glow on the polished metal wall, he saw them, thin, luminous tendrils, just beneath the surface, beginning to bloom. Knowledge was the infection. Understanding was the rot. The thrumming reached a crescendo, a silent vibration that threatened to shake his teeth loose. Outside, the perpetual Antarctic night seemed to deepen, the stars above winking out, not due to cloud, but as if something vast had shifted, occluding the heavens. The silence that followed was worse than the thrum. It was the silence of infinite, uncaring space pressing in. The silence of the Leviathan settling back into its slumber. Already forgetting the microscopic itch-thorn, didn't he scream? He simply sat down on the cold floor, his back against the vibrating container of the thing they had unearthed. He stared at his hands, waiting for the blue lines to appear. The universe was vast, cold, and utterly indifferent. They had found a truth never meant for mortal minds. Humanity wasn't just small, it was dust, and the cosmic wind was always blowing outside Outpost Sigma. Beneath 3 kilometers, of ancient, crushing ice. The dreamer stirred. Just once. A ripple in the fabric of reality, and in the frozen mirror of a glacial crevasse. A distorted reflection showed not the stars, but an eye the size of a galaxy, lidless, pupilless, and utterly, terrifyingly awake. Story 4. The first thing Sarah noticed was the smell, not overpowering, not immediately foul, but wrong, like damp earth left too long in a forgotten corner, undercut by something sweetly metallic, like old pennies left in the rain. It bloomed in the hallway outside the spare bedroom, faint but persistent, a ghost in her nostrils every time she passed. She dismissed it at first. Old houses settle, pipes sigh, forgotten things decay. Her own century-old Victorian, Maplewood, was full of such whispers, but this scent had a weight to it, a presence that lingered long after she hurried past to the kitchenette. Was the silence that followed that truly pricked her nerves. Maplewood was never truly quiet. Floorboards creaked like arthritic bones settling. The old furnace rumbled deep within its belly. Wind sighed through the eaves. A constant, mournful companion, yet standing outside that spare bedroom door, the one they used for storage. Crammed with old furniture, draped in dusty sheets, the house held its breath. The creak stopped. The furnace fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause its lament. Only the faint, rhythmic drip, drip, drip from somewhere deep within the walls remained. A metronome counting down in the sudden. Oppressive hush. Sarah placed her palm flat against the cool wood of the door. The silence felt thick, cloying, like wading through cold oil. She hadn't been inside in months. Why would she? Just dusty boxes and her grandmother's old dresser, smelling of mothballs and regret. Yet the compulsion was sudden and fierce. She had to open it. It wasn't curiosity. It was the bone-deep certainty that something waited just on the other side. Listening to her hesitation, her hand trembled on the tarnished brass knob. The metal felt unnaturally cold, sucking the warmth from her skin. She turned it slowly, the latch clicking open with a sound that echoed far too loudly in the unnatural stillness. She pushed the door open just a crack. The smell intensified, blooming into the hallway, damp earth, copper, and now, unmistakably, the cloying sweetness of decay. It wasn't tea, rotten food. It was deeper, older, like something buried and forgotten. Cold air, several degrees cooler than the rest of the house, seeped out, raising goosebumps on her arms. The room was dark, the single window obscured by heavy, faded drapes. Only a sliver of weak, late afternoon light sliced through a gap. illuminating swirling dust motes dancing in the frigid air. The shapes beneath the dust sheets loomed like crouching beasts, and the dripping. It was louder now, clearly coming from the far corner, behind the shrouded bulk of her grandmother's dresser. Drip, 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 slow, deliberate. Maddening Sarah flicked on the overhead light. The single bulb, weak and yellowed, buzzed reluctantly to life, casting more shadows than it banished. The dust sheets glowed faintly, spectral in the gloom. The dripping continued, a constant counterpoint to the frantic thudding of her own heart. She took a step inside, the floorboard groaning under her weight. The cold intensified, wrapping around her ankles like clammy hands. Her breath misted in the air she approached the dresser. The smell was strongest here, a physical pressure against her face. The dripping sounded like it was coming from inside the wall behind it, or perhaps under the dresser. Her rational mind scrabbled for explanations. A leaky pipe, a dead mouse decomposing in the wall cavity. Reasonable, mundane, yet the silence, the cold, the weight of the air screamed otherwise moving. The heavy dresser alone was impossible. She fetched a crowbar from the basement workbench. The cold steel, a grim comfort in her hand. The journey down and back felt like traversing a different house. The familiar creaks returned. The furnace rumbled back to life, but stepping back into the spare bedroom was like plunging into icy water. The silence slammed down again, the dripping louder, more insistent. The cold bit deeper wedge the crowbar. Heave. The dresser scraped reluctantly across the worn wooden floor, revealing the wall behind it. Sarah gasped. There was no leak. Instead, nestled against the baseboard was a hole, not a crack, not a mouse hole, but a ragged, dark opening roughly the size of a dinner plate. It looked gnawed. The edges of the plaster and lath were splintered and damp, stained a dark, ugly brown. The dripping sound emanated clearly from its impenetrable blackness. Drip, drip, drip onto the dusty floorboards. Beneath it she crouched, peering into the hole. The smell billowed out, thick and nauseating. It was pitch black inside, a darkness that seemed to absorb the weak light from the bulb. She couldn't see anything, but she felt it, a sense of immense space, impossibly large for the confines of the wall cavity, a vast, cold emptiness that stretched down and down, and within that emptiness, a presence, not a sound, not a shape, but a palpable attention, focused solely on her crouched form. It felt ancient, patient, and utterly devoid of warmth, a wave of primal terror. Colder than the air in the room washed over her. She scrambled back, dropping the crowbar with a clatter that shattered the silence like glass. Her breath came in ragged gasps. This wasn't a pipe. This wasn't a rodent. This was something else. Something wrong. She spent the next 2 days trying to ignore it. She stuffed towels around the hole. She sprayed air freshener until the cloying chemical floral scent battled sickeningly with the underlying stench of earth and decay. She played loud music to drown out the dripping. It didn't work. The silence always returned, heavier than before. The cold seeped under the door, chilling the hallway. The dripping became a constant, maddening drumbeat in her skull. She found herself staring at the closed door, her skin crawling. Convinced she could feel the weight of that attention pressing against the wood sleep became impossible. Every creak of the house was a footstep. Every sigh of the wind was a breath from the hole. Vivid, fractured nightmares plagued her. Cold, dark spaces. The feeling of being watched by countless unseen eyes. The sensation of damp earth filling her mouth and nose. She woke gasping, drenched in cold sweat. The phantom scent of decay clinging to her skin. The revelation came not with a bang, but with a slow, dawning horror. She was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cold cup of tea, her eyes burning from exhaustion. The house was in one of its unnerving silences, and then she heard it. Not the dripping, a new sound, faint, almost subliminal, a dry, rustling scrape, like claws or teeth, dragging slowly, deliberately, across the inside of the wall, not from the spare bedroom wall, from the wall behind her, in the kitchen. It wasn't confined to one place. The realization hit her like a physical blow. It wasn't just a hole in a wall. It was a passage, a network, spreading through the bones of her house, through the walls, under the floors. The dripping wasn't water. It was something else falling from somewhere. The cold wasn't just air. It was the breath of something vast and hidden, exhaling from its lair within her own home. The silence wasn't absence. It was listening panic, raw and jagged, tore through her. She grabbed her phone, fingers fumbling. She had to call someone. The police, a plumber, an exterminator. Who would believe her? Who could fix this? As she scrolled, her thumb brushed against the photo gallery icon. An old picture filled the screen. Her, smiling, standing in front of Maplewood the day she bought it. Sunlight dappling the grand facade. Her eyes drawn not to her own face, but to the second-floor window just visible over her shoulder. The spare bedroom window in the grimy glass, blurred by time and digital compression, but unmistakable once seen, was a shape, not a reflection of the trees outside, a dark, indistinct smudge, pressed against the inside of the pane. It had no clear features, but it suggested a hunched form, elongated limbs, folded unnaturally. unnaturally, and 2 points of deepest black where eyes might be, staring directly at the camera, at her. The phone clattered onto the table. The photo was taken 5 years ago, before the smell, before the dripping, before the hole. It had been there all along, watching, waiting, nesting in the dark spaces. Between the walls the silence in the kitchen deepened. The cold intensified, frosting the window above the sink. The dripping sound suddenly stopped. The abrupt cessation was more terrifying than its constancy. In the profound, suffocating quiet, Sarah heard a new sound, a soft, wet, clicking noise, like something large and chitinous slowly unfurling. It didn't come from the spare bedroom, it came from directly beneath the kitchen floorboards. Right where she sat frozen in terror, she couldn't he move, couldn't he breathe. The scent of damp earth and metallic decay filled the kitchen, thick enough to taste. The clicking stopped. Then a single drawn-out scrape, not on wood, on something softer, something that yielded, like insulation. The revelation wasn't just about the thing in the walls. It was about her own blindness, her desperate need for normalcy, the way she dismissed every warning sign, rationalized every tremor of fear. The house hadn't just been its home. It had been her cage, her lullaby, masking the horror growing within its structure. She had welcomed the monster, cherished the tomb it hollowed out around her floorboard, directly in front of her groaned, not with settling weight, but with pressure from below. A tiny crack appeared in the worn wood, spewing out a puff of gray, fibrous insulation. Then another crack, parallel to the first. The wood began to bulge upwards, slowly, agonizingly, as if something immense was pushing against it from the crawl space beneath. The wet clicking sound resumed, closer now, vibrating up through the soles of her feet. Sarah finally found her voice, but it emerged as a choked whimper, lost in the vast, listening silence of the house. The bulge in the floorboard widened. A splinter of wood snapped. In the dark space beneath, something shifted, something vast and segmented scraped against the foundation stone, and then a single glistening black feeler, thin as a spider's leg, but thick as her thumb, tipped with a needle-sharp point, quested slowly, deliberately, up through the crack in the floor. It waved blindly in the air for a moment, tasting the cold kitchen atmosphere, dripping a single bead of viscous, tar-like fluid onto the linoleum. Drip. It oriented itself, not towards the light, not towards the door towards her. The silence held. The cold deepened. The feeler retracted slowly, deliberately, back into the dark fissure. But the bulge remained. The pressure remained. The attention remained. Focused and hungry Sarah understood then, with a clarity colder than the grave, that the hole in the wall wasn't an entrance. It was an exit, a breathing hole. The true entrance was below, had always been below, and the thing that lived there, that had grown fat and ancient in the forgotten spaces of her home, was no longer content to simply watch from the walls. It was done waiting in the dark. It was coming upend, as the first, wet, tearing sound of wood rending apart echoed through the silent kitchen. Sarah realized the most horrifying truth of all. She wasn't trapped in the house with it. She was trapped inside it, a part of its structure, just another hollow space waiting to be filled. The last thing she heard, before the screaming began, whose screaming? Hers. Or the sound of the house itself finally giving voice to its ancient agony, was the soft, insistent scrape of countless chitinous legs against bare earth, moving steadily upwards from the dark, and beneath it all, the soft, wet clicking of jaws opening in the endless, hungry dark beneath the floor. The dripping, she knew, would start again soon, but it wouldn't be water, and it wouldn't be falling into an empty hole. It would be falling onto her. She closed her eyes, not to shut out the horror unfolding at her feet, but because she finally understood what the darkness behind her eyelids truly was. Not an absence of light, but a preview, a glimpse of the vast, cold, suffocating emptiness that had always been waiting, just beneath the thin veneer of her world. The thing from the crawl space wasn't invading her home. It was simply reclaiming its territory, and she was just the warm, fragile thing that had been living inside it, a temporary occupant, a passing morsel as the floorboards finally gave way with a splintering groan, showering her with dust and wood fragments. Sarah didn't scream. She let out a sigh, a release of breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It sounded disturbingly like the wind sighing through the eaves, the last coherent thought that flickered through her mind before the cold, wet embrace pulled her down into the crushing dark, was terrifyingly simple. I think it is hungry. Story 5. The first time it happened, Martin wrote it off as a particularly vivid nightmare. Exhaustion, the doctor said. Stress from the brutal deadlines at the architecture firm. Too much caffeine, not enough sleep. Simple, logical, but logic felt brittle, like thin ice. When the paralysis clamped down it, always started the same way. He'd drift off. The familiar shapes of his bedroom, the sleek dresser, the framed blueprint of his award-winning civic center, the digital clock casting its soft green glow dissolving into the murk of near sleep. Then a sudden, sickening lurch, as if the bed had dropped 6 inches. His eyes would snap open, but his body was stone, not heavy, absent, a hollow shell pinned to the mattress. The air would change. It thickened, tasting metallic, like licking a battery, undercut with a cloying sweetness that reminded him of burnt sugar and ozone. The green glow from the clock would seem to dim, pulling back into itself, leaving the corners of the room swimming in an unnatural, velvety darkness that pulsed faintly. He could hear the frantic drumbeat of his own heart, the frantic whistle of air through his nostrils, the only sounds in a world suddenly, profoundly silent. The silence wasn't empty, it was occupied. That S when the breathing started, not his own, a wet, ragged inhalation, drawn from somewhere impossibly close to the foot of the bed, yet also impossibly far away, as if echoing down a long, cold tunnel. It was the sound of lungs struggling, of something drowning in its own substance. It crawled into his ears, vibrating through his paralyzed bones. Couldn't he move his head? Couldn't he turn to look? His eyes strained towards the ceiling, fixed on the faint, textured pattern he knew so well. But his peripheral vision, it caught the movement, a deeper shadow, coalescing at the edge of the encroaching dark, near the bedroom door. Tall, too tall, it seemed to stoop beneath the ceiling, its form indistinct, wavering like heat haze off asphalt. It had no features, just an impression of elongated limbs, impossibly thin, articulated in ways that defied understanding, and it radiated cold, a deep, marrow-numbing cold that seeped into the room, making the air itself feel brittle. He named it. In the frantic, silent screaming of his mind, Mr. Shivers. Night after night, the visits grew longer. The paralysis held him tighter. The cold deepened. The wet, rattling breaths grew louder, closer. He'd lie there, trapped in his own body, while Mr. Shivers remained just outside his direct line of sight, a peripheral nightmare, a silhouette of pure dread. He began to dread sleep. He drank bitter, black coffee until his hands shook. He installed blindingly bright LED lights that hummed with sterile efficiency. He played white noise machines, so loud they vibrated the floorboards. Nothing helped. Mr. Shivers always found the gap, the sliver of darkness between the light and the sound, the terror, wasn't tea just in the visits. It was in the residue, waking up, drenched in a cold sweat that smelled faintly of that burnt sugar and ozone. His limbs tingling with pins and needles as sensation sluggishly returned. It was the feeling of being watched that persisted long after sunrise. A prickle between his shoulder blades, even in crowded elevators. It was the fleeting glimpses in the polished steel of the elevator doors. In the dark glass of his office window, after hours of a tall, stooped shadow, flickering just behind his own reflection. Was it real, or was the sleep deprivation, the constant terror, finally cracking his sanity? He confided in his therapist, Dr. Eris Thorne, a calm, rational man with kind eyes and framed degrees on the wall. Martin described the paralysis, the entity, the suffocating dread. He left out the reflections. Thorne listened patiently, nodding, his pen scratching notes. Hypnagogic hallucinations, he suggested gently. Extremely common with sleep paralysis. The brain, caught between wakefulness and sleep, constructs narratives from sensory input. The shadow figure, a manifestation of primal fear, the predator in the dark. But it feels so real, Martin whispered, his voice raw. The cold, the breathing, it feels like it. Learning me. Thorne leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. The mind is a powerful storyteller, Martin, especially under stress. What you're describing, the specific sensations, the entity's persistence, it often links to unresolved trauma. Something buried, something the subconscious is trying to process, or perhaps warn you about trauma. Martin's mind skittered away. His childhood wasn't idyllic, but it wasn't traumatic. Distant parents, yes. A competitive older sister. Clara, he pushed the thought away. Clara was gone. A car accident years ago. Painful, yes, but resolved. Wasn't he it? The next visit from Mr. Shivers was different. The paralysis slammed down as usual. The metallic sweetness filling his nostrils. The cold gnawing at his core. The breathing was louder, wetter. A gurgling rasp that sounded like it was right beside his ear. But this time, it moved. Martin heard it. Not just the breathing, but the faint, sickening sound of fabric tearing, or perhaps skin. A slow, deliberate shuffle across the carpet. He couldn't see it directly, but the shape in his peripheral vision grew larger, denser, blotting out more of the dim light from the clock. It wasn't by the door anymore. It was beside the bed. Towering over him, a new sound joined the ragged breathing. A low, rhythmic clicking, like chitinous claws tapping together. It vibrated through the mattress. The cold intensified, becoming a physical pressure on his chest, squeezing the air from his frozen lungs. He felt a presence leaning over him, smelling now not just of ozone and sugar, but of damp earth and something decayed, faintly floral beneath the rot. Lilies, funeral lilies, he couldn't scream. His vocal cords were stone. His mind screamed, a silent, endless shriek of pure animal terror. Get away, get away, get away. Then a voice, not audible, not exactly. It resonated inside his skull, bypassing his ears, cold and wet and ancient, scraping against the bone of his thoughts. Remember the wet road, the lilies Clara. The name hit him like a physical blow. Clara. Images, long buried, fragmented and sharp, erupted behind his eyes. Rain slashing against a windshield. Headlights glaring off slick asphalt. The desperate, useless spin of the steering wheel. The sickening crunch of metal. The overwhelming, cloying scent of lilies Clara, S' favorite flower. A huge bouquet filling the back seat, knocked loose by the impact, and Clara not moving, glass glittering in her dark hair like cruel diamonds, her eyes wide and unseeing, reflecting the flashing red and blue lights. His fault, his distraction, his stupid argument with her moments before. His fault, the paralysis shattered with a gasp that tore from his throat. He sat bolt upright, drenched in sweat, trembling violently. The room was empty, silent. The digital clock glowed green. 3:07 a.m. The scent of lilies hung heavy in the air, thick and nauseatingly sweet, mingling with the fading tang of ozone. It wasn't a dream residue. It was there. Didn't he sleep for 3 days? He moved through his life like a ghost, haunting his own body. The architectural models on his desk seemed sinister, their sharp angles casting long, predatory shadows. The hum of the office fluorescents echoed the clicking he heard in the dark. Every reflection held the potential for that stooped silhouette. Doctor. Thorne's words echoed. Unresolved trauma. But this wasn't just memory, mister. Shivers wasn't just a hallucination. It knew. It knew about Clara. It knew his guilt. He went back to Dr. Thorne, desperate, babbling about the voice, the lilies, the undeniable scent. Thorne listened, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a focused intensity. Martin, he said slowly, his voice low and serious. The olfactory sense is powerfully linked to memory. What you're experiencing, the scent. The auditory hallucinations, it could be a profound somatic manifestation of repressed guilt. Your mind is forcing you to confront it. But it spoke. It knew her name. Martin choked out. The mind knows its own secrets, Thorne replied, his eyes holding Martin's with an unsettling directness, even the ones we bury deepest. Sometimes the only way it can express them is through externalized figures. Monsters we create to punish ourselves. He paused. Or perhaps to warn us. Martin felt a fresh wave of cold dread. Warn me. About what? Thorne leaned back, steepling his fingers. Perhaps that the guilt isn't just psychological, Martin. Perhaps it's attracting something else. something that feeds on such potent, unresolved emotion. Like calls to like the implication hung in the air, more terrifying than any explicit monster, was Mr. Shivers born from him, or was it something ancient and hungry that had simply found him, drawn to the psychic wound he carried, the line between internal demon and external entity dissolved into terrifying ambiguity that night. The paralysis didn't wait for sleep. It struck as he was brushing his teeth, the familiar lurch dropping him to his knees on the cold tile floor. The bathroom light flickered violently, casting stuttering, monstrous shadows that danced on the walls. The metallic sweetness, the ozone, the lilies, they flooded the small space, thick and suffocating. The cold was absolute. Stealing his breath in visible plumes, he was frozen, kneeling before the sink. His reflection in the mirror, wide-eyed with terror. Behind him, the shower curtain rustled, though there was no breeze. The wet, ragged breathing filled the room, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Then the clicking, louder, sharper. From inside the shower stall, he couldn't turn his head. He could only stare into the mirror, at his own terrified face, and then it stepped into view behind his reflection, Mr. Shivers, not a peripheral shadow anymore, but fully present, horrifyingly detailed, taller than the ceiling should allow. It stooped, its long, thin limbs folded like a praying mantis. Its skin wasn't skin. It was the color of old bruises, mottled purple and black, stretched taut over impossible angles. Where a face should be was a smooth, featureless oval, like polished obsidian, reflecting the flickering light, and his own petrified expression, but worse, draped over its shoulders, like a shawl, was a tattered, stained piece of fabric, cream silk, embroidered with delicate lilies. Clara's favorite scarf, the one she was wearing the night she died, the one that had been lost in the wreckage the entity placed one impossibly long, clawed hand on Martin's reflected shoulder. The touch was a phantom agony, a searing cold that burned through his paralysis. The voice filled his skull again, colder, clearer, dripping with malicious understanding. You let the petals fall, Martin. You let the wheel slip. You buried the scream, but I dug it up. I wear her silence. Now the revelation wasn't just about the accident. It was about the nature of his tormentor. Mr. Shivers wasn't merely a manifestation of his guilt. It was a scavenger that had found the psychic carcass of his sister's death and worn it. It had absorbed the memory, the pain, the scent of lilies, and the moment of impact, turning it into a weapon against him. His unresolved trauma wasn't just attracting it. It was feeding it. Clara's silence, her stolen life, was its shroud the entity in the mirror tilted its featureless head. You built walls, Martin. Pretty, empty walls. But guilt has roots. Deep roots. It finds cracks. It grows in the dark places you pretend don't exist. Like me, the flickering light stabilized for a split second. In the mirror, Martin saw not just the monstrous figure behind him, but his own face changing. The lines of terror seemed to deepen, his eyes sinking into bruised sockets, his skin taking on a sickly, mottled hue, a travesty of the entity's own visage. Was it a trick of the light, or was he seeing the reflection of what he was becoming, a vessel, consumed by his own hidden rot? The paralysis lifted as abruptly as it had struck. He collapsed forward, his forehead hitting the cold tile, gasping, retching. The sense vanished. The light steadied. The bathroom was empty. Utterly silent, he crawled away from the mirror, trembling, his mind reeling. The lingering unease wasn't just fear of the entity's return. It was the horrifying knowledge it had forced upon him. His guilt was more than a memory. It was a tangible force, a stain on his soul that had drawn a predator, and that predator had shown him the horrifying potential within himself. The reflection in the mirror wasn't just terror. It was a glimpse of his own corruption, the guilt taking root, twisting him from the inside out. He knew Mr. Shivers would be back. It wasn't just visiting anymore. It was nesting in the dark places he'd built inside himself. And the next time he feared, when he looked in the mirror, the monstrous reflection staring back might not be an illusion. It might be the truth of what his buried guilt, watered by terror, was slowly, inexorably turning him into. The architect of civic centers was now the architect of his own haunting, building walls that couldn't keep the thing inside him contained. The cold wasn't just in the room, it was in his bones. The scent of lilies wasn't just memory, it was the perfume of his own decaying conscience. The line between Martin and Mr. Shivers was blurring, and the most terrifying revelation was that he wasn't entirely sure which side of the mirror the real monster belonged on anymore. The dread didn't just linger. It had taken up permanent residence, whispering with the voice of wet earth and torn silk that his punishment was only just beginning. And the worst part, the faint, traitorous curve he thought he saw at the corner of his own mouth, in the polished chrome of the faucet, as he finally, shakily, stood up